There we go. So that we can share this with others and create some tutorials or enhance our tutorial video database off of this as well. Tuesday tips are exciting for me. They're a little bit different type of training. We have a lot of other training tools available, and so if you don't see what you're expecting, please reach out to us, and we can either do some one-on-one or get you to the right tool set to be able to answer your questions. Today we're going to focus on a couple of different areas. First, we're going to talk about CompTracker, which is a peer-to-peer database sharing tool. It's independent of form vendors. So if you have some appraisers in your area that you like to share data with, or that you would view as a peer and would like to share with, it doesn't matter which form vendor they use. Through DataMaster, you can share data with them. And I'm going to show you some examples of what gets shared, the control that you have over that sharing, and what we've done to ensure that it's USPAP compliant, that you're not sharing confidential information. And then we're going to, every Tuesday or every time we do this, we try to do some customizations. So I'll focus a little bit on customization. But most of the day today, I want to talk about the market analysis tool and show you some tips and tricks for using our market and neighborhood analysis tool. In fact, earlier today, I was on with a group of appraisers from Texas, and they use the market analysis in a very different way. And I wanted to show you some of the things that you can do with the market analysis tool. So to begin with, we're going to start a file, and I'm just going to call this Tuesday tip demo. There we go. And we're gonna work mostly in the URAR today, so it's going to get this file going. I'm going to load a little bit of data so that we can show you each of the examples. We'll start with our subject property. If you didn't join us last week, we shared on how you can customize the navigation as to which tab comes up first. But I'm just going to add a subject property by MLS number, and then we're going to add some comparables for this. These are the comparable search is one that I did earlier, and these are some comparables from an actual file that I worked on, which will give you a good example of the CompTracker database. Just take 1 second here. So I hope that most of you are familiar with our comparable data screen, the grid as we would call it. Today we're going to focus kind of in this upper area where it says comp number 1, and then you've got a blue icon with a little red circle, and there's a number 1 inside. Comparable number 3 has two inside the red circle. This is our CompTracker icon, and if we click on that icon, it will show you the number of times that you've used that comparable in a report. It also shows you which report you used it in and the date in which you used it, and then any differences are highlighted between what's currently in the grid and and the data that you used before. And the way that CompTracker works is there's two different ways to get data, to get your comparables into the CompTracker database. The first way is when you send comparables to the report by using the send and report feature, we automatically save those comparables into your personal CompTracker database. That CompTracker database is saved in the cloud, much like your customization file is saved in the cloud. And we'll log that at that time. And then the next way that we move data into the CompTracker database is when you're all finished with the file, you can put the MISMO file into your personal CompTracker database file. And I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing that there's a bunch of different ways to get to this uploader, but on the main page, the home page in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little hyperlink that says load MISMO files. If you click on load MISMO files, we're going to launch a web browser. And if you're not already logged in to your account, it's going to ask you, I'll sign out here so that you can see. It's going to ask you, you're going to see something that looks like this. You're going to need to use your DataMaster login and password. You can click remember me so that the next time you log in, you don't have to put the password in. And you'll come to our CompTracker importer, our MISMO importer web page. We can upload files. There's some of your information, your appraiser information is there. And it's pretty simple. You just choose the files, the MISMO files that you want to upload. If you haven't already told us where those files are saved, we're going to ask you, and then the next time we're going to remember where you saved those files so that you don't have to keep remembering yourself. I'll just upload 4 of them here. You can upload as many as you would like. And you can even go back in time and upload several years worth. The great thing about loading previous or past MISMO files is that it gives you a jump start on building your CompTracker database. So I'm just going to load 4. It does take a little bit longer the more you load. I recommend every setting just a reminder in your calendar. Maybe you have an assistant, somebody that can do this on a regular basis. I try to load them every couple of days. But these are going to be finished files that I've already delivered to a client. So once they're selected, you hit upload. It'll take just a second to load those. Depending on the size, the number of comparables, we're reading through that MISMO file and gathering all the information about those comparables. We're also verifying that this is your file. So we're going to double check against your credentials, against your license, so that we don't have a situation where somebody else gets your information. So it's loading them, it's processing them, and then you'll get a little report here. It says that we were successful in loading 4 files. It gives me the file name, who the appraiser was, the license, and then the type of form that was loaded. If any had failed, you would see a list of the failed MISMO files and why they failed. One of the main reasons why a MISMO file might fail is if the appraiser name doesn't match with our records, or if the file's not a MISMO 2.6 GSE file. So for example, the 2 to 4 family You can create a MISMO file, but it's not a 2.6 file, and so that would be something that would fail, or if it was a corrupted file. But we would give you the reason why that file was not able to import. So those are the two ways. Again, you can just go to the MISMO upload hyperlink, and then also when you send to report, when you send to report, it uploads. If the file number matches the file number in DataMaster, we're going to preserve or save the most recent version of that comparable. So you may have made some changes between when it left DataMaster and went to your client. So we compare we compare those two instances of that same comparable, and we save the most recent version for that file. That's why you see here, I have two different versions of this comparable. This one is the one that went to a client. This other file, this 22250 file, was actually not a UAD report. It was a GPAR form. And so you'll see that a lot of the data is different. The way that I displayed the actual age was different in the GPAR form. So because a MISMO was not created, this is the most current version of that comparable for this file number, for this particular file number. Now, what's handy about having the CompTracker is I can select any of the data that I want, and as I select it, hit update. Now it's going to fill in the grid. So this comparable, because I've used it recently, is pretty much cleaned up and everything is verified. If I close that, you'll see now that all the fields have been filled in. This comparable is ready to go. I really don't need to do anything else to it. I find that right now in today's market, in a typical report for me, anywhere from 2 to 3 comparables I've already used previously, and so it's a big time savings. Now that's for my own personal data, my comparables for myself. We can also share with another appraiser. So I have an appraiser that I share with. Don't know if he's on the meeting today. His name is Gentry. And Gentry and I have agreed to share, and I'm going to show you kind of how that happens. Gentry used this comparable. I can see the file number, when he used it, and he used it as a comparable. If I like the things that Gentry did, I can select those fields individually by just clicking on them, or I could select all of them. I can select only the ratings if it was my particular file, or an individual file. So I can see this was a cash transaction with 0 concessions. There may be some things here that I don't have to verify. I trust Gentry. I've known him as an appraiser for a long time. And then if I hit update comparable, it's only going to take the items that were in green and update those. So you'll see that those items, those fields were now updated. One of the other things that we can see, let me find one. So this comparable number 6, if I click on it, you'll see that it was the subject. So I appraised it and it was the subject property. So I'm obviously going to keep a lot of that information. Of course, it was probably under contract the time that I used it. The current list price is $415. I know that it sold for $430, but I'm going to use this as a listing. It's an under contract listing, so I can't change that. But there's a lot of other things. This is my measured square footage, my room count. The MLS said that it had only interior access in the basement, but it was a walk-up. So a lot of the information there is up to date. It was the subject property, and I can update that. So you don't only know that the comparable was used in a particular report, but if it was the comparable or if it was the subject property. I find this very useful in keeping consistency throughout my reports, my quality and condition ratings, my location and view ratings, basement finish, room count, all of those items it's much easier to stay consistent with. So you're probably asking yourself, well, how do I get set up with this? If you're a DataMaster Unlimited user for DataMaster Pro, CompTracker is a feature that's already included in your subscription at no additional charge. You just need to make sure that you get set up for it. And the way that you do that is to go to the settings file. So we're going to do this upper left-hand corner hamburger menu. And then to settings, and then to CompTracker settings. And again, in this CompTracker settings, you'll have a couple of things you can upload from the MISMO files from here, just like you could on the home page. We can also set up an icon on your taskbar. I have a little icon pin to be able to upload my MISMO there as well, and we can help you to do that. But this is where you would set up your plan. So you would want to go into my plan and walk through the steps there to register and set up your own CompTracker database. Again, there's no charge. There's no extra charge for DataMaster Unlimited users. This is also where I would invite other appraisers to share with me. So if they're within your same company, maybe you have a bunch of different appraisers that work together within the same company, you would click the invite. Tells what you're going to invite them to share. And then as we do send, it's going to send them an email inviting them. They have to agree to share. So it's kind of like social media, like a Facebook invite and share. And then once they accept that invite, then you'll be shared. For someone outside of your organization or your company, you would send an invite, fill in their email address, their name, first name, company, and phone number. These are both optional. And then it sends them an email inviting them to share as well. You may want to pick up the phone and call them and let them know that you're going to send them a share request. They may think it's a spam, or it may end up in their spam folder, or they may think that it's not a legitimate request. So this is where you would set that up. And then you can also manage your shares from here. You can stop sharing. You can change which features, physical characteristics, or assignment results from this window as well. One of the things to note is we've spent an awful lot of time making sure that this is all USPAP compliant, and USPAP is constantly changing. And so we are, one of the things that we are entertaining is some changes to our permissions. But one of the things that we want to make sure is that if you relied on some information on a previous report from a shared peer, and now you're not sharing with that peer, within that report, we still save the shared data because that's what you relied on at that time, even though the share with that individual may be broke at this time or may not be current. If you use that share in a previous report, we're going to maintain that for your work file. That way you always know what you relied on going forward in a report that may have been historical. And just like anything in DataMaster, when you hit the send to report button, we archive whatever has happened at that time into your own digital work file. That digital work file is saved on your computer, wherever you direct it. And if you're not sure where that is, just go to the home page to My Files, and you'll see the folder in which your DMA or your DataMaster digital work file is being saved. I save mine on a local server here for my office because we share a lot of files back and forth. But you'll see that all of that data is shared for me locally to have access to. DataMaster does not share does not warehouse the DMA file in like a cloud environment, but it does work very well in a Google Drive or a OneDrive, so that you can access those files wherever you may be. So that's where you would find out where your files are being stored. Your digital work file is just under My Files on the home page. So with that, I'm going to shift over to, thank you, Marty. I saw that you put those the links to the paired time adjustment tool. And maybe what we'll do is our next Tuesday tip, I'll take both of those tools and we'll show how to use them. That would be a good reminder. We've demoed them a few times, but we'll do a deeper look into both of those. So the next thing I wanted to show you is our market analysis tool. Market analysis is becoming more and more important. Our clients are asking for it, and there's a lot of great tools and options that we have within our market analysis tab. I want you to think about the market analysis as not necessarily just a place to load the 1004 MC, which many of our clients don't request anymore. But think of this as a way that you can analyze two different data sets. We have, as long as you can get the information out of your MLS and export it in and put it into DataMaster, we can analyze it for you. And so you could use this in a lot of different ways. I could put all of the properties in the competing market that were, say, on a golf course. And then I could put in the neighborhood tab all the properties that are not on the golf course. And then I'd be able to see side by side a median price per square foot, how they had changed in the marketplace, if they were increasing at the same rate, if maybe the golf course properties were increasing at a greater rate. So this is simply a way to look at two different data sets at the same time. One of the other key features is being able to set the effective date. So you could also do some retrospective work here. Often I get asked to do an opinion of value as of a death date, and maybe it was 6 months ago. So I can go back 6 months and set that effective date now so that it will be 6 months back. And we're going to look at the data as if we had pulled it 6 months ago instead of pulling it today. So that effective date tool is very powerful as well. We'll jump back to today. I'm going to start with the market conditions. I'm going to load some files from my MLS. I previously, to save time, created an MLS export file out of my MLS. And while these are loading, it's important for you to, as you export out of your MLS, to load or to get all of the statuses, not just sold, active, and under contract currently, but you'll want to get all of the statuses: canceled, withdrawn, expired, pending, under contract, pending, still showing, whatever the status may be. You want to get all of them. And the reason that you want to get all of them is in our detail grid here, you can see that we can tell you what the status was during that time period. So for example, let's look here. We have, let's see if we can scroll down through here. We have this one that was canceled, is currently canceled, but during the 7 to 12 month period, it was on the market. It was actually under contract. I can see here that it was under contract. I can go to the 4 to 6 month period and see that during the 4 to 6 month period, this was an active listing. It's currently sold. As of today, it's sold. See if we have any that were withdrawn. In today's market, it's unusual to find something that was withdrawn during a period because things are selling so quickly. But if we had only picked up the sold, active, and under contract, we would not have found that this number 5 here was active during the 4 to 6 period, and it's now canceled. So that becomes part of the data for the 1004MC in that 4 to 6 month period. It's one of those 5 active listings. If you're in a market where you like to count under contract with your active listings, we can do that for you. It's simply a change in the settings. Again, that would be a global setting. So I'm going to go to the upper left-hand corner to the, as we affectionately call it, the hamburger menu. I'm going to go to settings and then to market analysis and check the box count pending properties as active. And now if anything was under contract, it would count it throughout the report as an active listing instead of a pending listing. There's many markets where that's the custom, that's what's expected in their reporting. And so if you're in that market and you need to change that, that's again how you would do that. You would go to the setting or to the hamburger menu, settings, market analysis, count as pending. This is also where you can change the number of months for our graphs. If you want to display more than, I think we're defaulting right now to 12 months. I like it to be 24. You can also change the color of your graphs. There's a lot of different colors that you can get. If you don't like our default colors, you can change those. You can also change the polynomial curve or degree in which the polynomial graph curves. 2 or 3 is recommended. If you get much higher than that, it's not going to be very meaningful. It's going to squiggle all over the place and you really won't find trends. If it's a 1, it's going to be more like a linear representation instead of a polynomial. I have mine today set to 3. So I'm not changing any of these settings. We'll just cancel that, but that's where you would make some of those changes. So this tells me that I have 120 properties that came in. Here's the graph range of those properties. I can go and I can see the graphs. I can also see the summary. Here's the price per square foot scatter graph. Looks like I've got a couple of outliers I could go and clean up. The red diamonds again are the comparables and how they fit on that trend line and that trend line over time. We can also condense and move that trend line along. So if you want to look at a specific area or a specific point in time, or you want to zoom in on it, you can do that. The summary is a great place to see a lot of information. We go on a monthly basis. We'll tell you the number of sales, what the median sale price. These are all median numbers. The median days on market. You can see maybe a seasonality that may have occurred in that as you look through. We're going to display the number of months that are equal to the number of months in your graph. So if you have 24, you're going to see 24 months. If you have 12, you'll see 12 months displayed. Also, back on the detail page, you can export this to a CSV file that you could then import into Excel spreadsheet. You wouldn't have to go back into your MLS to create an additional export. So most of that, I think you're pretty familiar with on the 1004 MC. Now let me show you the neighborhood section. So think of this as simply another database, another set of data that we're going to compare against that first set of data. My MLS limits the number of listings that I can export out at one time to 600. And so I had to create a couple of different export files in my MLS to get the data that I wanted. So I'm looking at 2 years worth of data, and I'm looking at all the properties that have sold or were on the MLS during that 2-year period in the city in which my subject's market was. So the first competing market set was just those properties that were similar in style, size, age, etc. Now I'm bringing in all the rest of the data. And it took a couple of files. And you'll notice that when I add another file, it's going to stop and say, what do you want me to do? There's already data in here. What do you want me to do? So I want to append, I want to add to, or do I want to cancel, or do I want to just clear the grid and replace with this new set of data? I'm going to append. So right now I have 586 properties in. We're going to append, and you're going to see that it's going to add additional properties. What we're doing here also to make sure that we're not duplicating properties, if by mistake you happen to grab a couple of the same MLS listings, we check to make sure that those MLS numbers don't match, or if the address matches, that it's in fact a different MLS listing, so that you don't have a duplication of data. So that we do automatically. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about that as you're exporting out if maybe you grabbed a particular listing twice. And these are rather large files, so they take just a few minutes to process.
Hey, Jared, while we're waiting for that to finish, there's a question about the fields on the export. Can you adjust the fields that are exported from the market analysis detail?
Currently, no. That's a good suggestion, though. We're going to export the all of the columns or fields that are displayed within the detail tab. And honestly, I haven't tried to see if we export in the order in which they are in the detail sheet. And as soon as this processes, I'll show you what I'm thinking of there. That's a great question. I haven't tried that. Also, while I'm waiting for this, if you see some columns or some fields that we're missing that that you would like to have, let us know. We can add columns. We can add columns to that detail list. I find the detail in the detail tab, it's a little easier for me to get rid of outliers. So let me show that real quick. If I go to the detail tab, I can move these columns around. So I can shift them back and forth. I can also sort by these columns by simply clicking on the header, and it will sort the data. But I don't know if I export to a CSV file, if it will be in this order, if the column headers will be in that order or not. I'll play around with that and report back on it. But I do find that it's pretty easy to maybe take out an outlier. Maybe somebody forgot to put the square footage in their MLS, and so I end up with a 0 in the square footage, or maybe a giant that some data that just really doesn't apply. It's pretty easy to clean up those outliers. You would just highlight the field or the row, and then hit the delete key, and it will delete it out. And then it's going to ask you to save your changes, and that listing will be taken out of the data set. So on the neighborhood now, I have 1,434 properties. There is no limit to this. The only limit is by you putting them in. If I wanted to put 10 years worth of data, DataMaster could handle that. We could take 10 years worth of data. Currently, I have 2 years worth of data in this report. And now if I go to the larger market tab, you're going to see that on the left-hand side is the competing market graphs. Those are the graphs that come from this first tab. And then on the right side are the neighborhood, or this second data set. And so we can see how the market has been interacting. So it looks like my sub-market or my competing market has really started to stabilize here. We have this one outlier. Maybe I can go look and see why it sold for $599,000. That'd be easy enough. I go to the comparable grid, go to the detail, just sort by sold price, hit it twice. There's that $599. Let's just do a little investigation. I'm going to copy that MLS number, going to go over to the grid and throw it in and see why it sold for $200,000 higher than my other comparables. We'll take a look at it. I'm just curious, as you are. Let's look at these. Oh, it has this big, huge shop in the back. Looks like it's got a lot of amenities. There's a bunch of outbuildings. That's what that shop looks like. Again, remember, we're bringing in all the photos from the MLS. Yeah, so I could probably take that one out. This is really not the same market. It looks like it's got kind of inside this toy shop. And then it also looks like it's got a very large lot, about a half acre lot. We could look at the MLS sheet. Yep, it's just under half an acre. So if I want to remove that from my market analysis, because it really kind of skews everything, it's not the same. I just go to details. Again, we'll sort by sale price. I'm going to select that one and delete it. and then hit save change. And now it'll take a second to update. There we go. I must not have clicked it. So it's spinning there now. It's taken just a second. It's going to save. We'll know when it finishes because it'll take us back to the comparable page. Now, when we go to our graphs, you'll see that that outlier is not there. The graph looks a lot better. It's interesting, we didn't have any sales in the first part of the spring coming out of winter, but you can see how things are starting to kind of level off, where the neighborhood in general, all the properties in the city still kind of increasing. These orange or red we're seeing are increasing. Here's the list of sale price ratio for both of them side by side, the days on market side by side, total number of listings. So this is the activity. In my market, we don't have any distressed sales right now. I like the graphs where we're comparing two different things, sales and listings together. If you don't like that, you can look at them. Here's the list to sale price ratio. To add graphs to this list, just go to the graph tab and then add a graph, and you'll see there's a total of 28 different graphs that you can pick from. The ones on the right here are the ones that I've selected. The ones that are still available would be on the left side, or on the left side. And if you highlight them, you can just move that over, and then you can move it up and put it wherever you want to. And then we're going to remember that spot for next time. Once you set this, it stays globally for all of your report types. So I've got 9 or so, well, probably more than that. I have, looks like maybe 10 or 12 that I'm analyzing with. And then the ones that I'm putting into my report, I check box, and those are the only ones that are going to come into the report. So I have some that I look at, but I don't necessarily move them into my reports. And that's how you manage that. So so think about this again as two different data sets that you're comparing against each other. In our comparison summary, and again, I'm gonna blow this up here so that it's a little bit easier to see on your screen by just copying it and then making it a little bit bigger so that you can see what we're comparing here. The first data set, or the specific competing market data set, we're telling you the previous year, 13 to 24 months, over the current 0 to 12 months. So this is on an annual year-over-year basis. 13 to 24 months ago, I had 45 sales. I now have 57 sales. Looks like sale price, median sale price. Again, these are median numbers. And it's increased almost, well, $100,000 over the last 12 months. Price per square foot has increased. Days on market has increased slightly. List to sale price ratios remained about the same. The gross living area is very similar. Age is pretty similar. Lot size similar, etc. And then that larger market, we do the same thing. If you put that data in, we're going to show you the same thing. It looks like my larger market is maybe not increasing. Not increasing at the same rate, maybe a little bit less, but still pretty robust. The list to sale price ratio, though, is increasing. at a greater rate. So that's how you can use that annual comparison chart. Again, all of this is archived and saved within your digital work file automatically. So those are the things that I wanted to show you today. I really appreciate you hanging with us. And Marty, were there any other questions that came up?
Yeah, I think one question was about the office work file sharing.
Okay.
Can you show us how you set yours up and how that works?
Yeah, so a couple of different things. If you're in an office where you have multiple appraisers and maybe one assistant or two assistants, but they're working with several different appraisers, when you register with us, you need to make sure that all your appraisers are registered in the same office, that they're associated within that office. Then your assistant would come in and pick the appraiser that they're working with on that particular file. So that would be one thing. The files, you want to have access to the files in a centrally located area. So in my office, I have an assistant. Her name is Lisa. She's the boss, really. She's my wife. And so if this was Lisa working on the file, she would pick up one of the files and it would be file number 2272. So let's go to my files. She would type in the file number. She finds the DMA file and says open. Now she's working. We only have one appraiser in my office. So she's now working in this specific file. She could come in and continue to clean these reports, make some determinations. And then I might have her send this to the report. She can go in and send it to the report. I could work on it originally, put the comps in. The assistant could come in and work through and clean up those comparables. They could come in and get maybe these comments from the exceptions report to put into the report if they wanted, print off anything, verify the deeds and the doc numbers. Whatever you have your assistant doing, they can access this file as long as it's in a drive or a location that they can get to from their computer. So Kevin is another appraiser that we work with that's part of the DataMaster team. He works in Provo, Utah County. His assistant is in Cache County. So they're about 120 miles apart from each other. But they share through OneDrive their files. So his files are stored in a OneDrive location. So his assistant, he tells his assistant, please work on file number ... The assistant opens up the file, works on it, sends him a message when it's done. Then he opens that file. It's in the same location. They both have access to it. The customization file is going to stay with the appraiser. So as long as the assistant is working under that appraiser or identified the particular appraiser, all of these customizations are going to match that appraiser. If they change and work with a different appraiser, and that different appraiser has a different way of customizing, then the customizations would be different for that assistant because the appraiser has changed. So a couple of key things again, you need to make sure that the file is saved wherever you both have access to, or everyone has access to that drive or that location. And then you need to make sure with DataMaster, if you're multiple appraisers in the office, that you're registered, that your office is associated, all those appraisers are associated with the same same office. And we can certainly help you with that. We didn't get much time to go to customizations. I'd be happy to address any customizations that anyone's looking for. The reason or the way that you may know that you might need to do some changes to your customization is if you're constantly changing a field once we bring the data in, then we probably should look at that and see if we can customize it for you. You can see that when I load the data from the MLS, there's a lot of information that already comes in that I don't have to edit. And that's a huge time savings. And if you're constantly editing a field, let us know and we'd be happy to get that customized for you so that you don't have to edit that field anymore. I spend much more time verifying data, seeing if that data is relevant and doing the analysis than I do entering data or correcting or changing data. Thank you, Marty. That was a great question, and hopefully we answered that. I saw that Jim, my friend Jim Thompson, was on the phone or on the call. Thanks, Jim, for joining us. And if you'd like to connect as a CompTracker user, I'd be more than happy to connect with you, Jim. Just let me know.
Sorry, Jared, another question. Can you go back to the market analysis and show how you got the data into the 13 to 24 month?
You bet. Oh, you know what? Sorry, I'm in a different file. Let me go back to our demo file. I'm like, wait a minute, I swapped files there on us. Yeah, so you need to be able to export the data out of your MLS, and each MLS is a little bit different for how you do that. My MLS, I just say I want to go back 2 years or 750 days is usually what I do. So whatever your MLS allows you to export out, you then create that export file in your MLS. We only really need the single agent line or the MLS number for each of those listings. And then if I want to add to the neighborhood, I'm just going to go to neighborhood, get comparables, and then add the export file that I'd already created. Once you save it and tell us where it's saved, we're going to always go to that place to find your most recent ones. You can see I have a lot of them saved. To make it 24 months versus 12 or 18 months, you're going to go to the menu, the hamburger menu, settings, and then to market analysis. And then in the middle here, you'll change to the number of months that you want displayed. Now, if you only bring in 12 months worth of data and you have this selected to 24, it's going to look pretty interesting. You're going to be missing. So if I went to 36 months, you're going to see there's going to be a year worth of data on the front end that's missing because I didn't give it 36 months worth of data to work with. So you have to export out of your MLS the time period of data that you want to look at. This is going to look a little strange when it processes here. I think it changed. There we go. So let me go to the summary. Let's see. Oh, it's still only going back to 2 years. It may not have. Let me go back to my settings. No, I did 36 months. It should have. It should have adjusted to be the same, to equal. Actually, let me try one more thing. We may have to change the effective date since I did it when data was already in. We'll see if we can do it this way. Anyway, this is how you would change. This is how you would change it. And it's a good idea to change it when there's not data in the file, because it's trying to change at the same time. Let's see if it'll update all of these fields. And I have an awful lot of data in here, so it's processing a lot of information. One of the things I really like about this tool also is you don't have to be a wizard at Excel spreadsheets or some sort of spreadsheet software program to be able to create some real meaningful analysis and some meaningful graphs to be able to include in your reports and in your work file. Even my non-lender work, I include a lot of this data. My clients really appreciate understanding what's happening in the market, and it brings credibility to my report to be able to show some of these graphs and charts and tables. So it might take a few seconds here. Marty, did that answer the question though, I think?
Yeah, I think it did.
Okay. I would just remind you, as this is still processing, that we do this every other Tuesday. And so the next time we do this will be June 7th. So you can mark that on your calendar and join us for June 7th. And I'm going to spend some time with the paired sales analysis, time analysis tool, and the sensitivity analysis tool. And both the links to those are in the chat box for you to look at and play around with. And I'll probably show you how to find some duplicate sales that you can use in that paired sales, in that time adjustment tool as well. That's one of the things is having the tool, and the other is finding the data to put in the tool to be able to analyze. So this will probably take a long time just because we have so many files in there.
Well, that, and you're also on Zoom. That never helps.
I know, Zoom, and then I've got a bunch of other files of windows that are open. So, but that's what we've got today. Please join us again. And if there's something between now and then, a question that comes up, please reach out to us. I can put my contact information in the chat as well. If anybody would like to reach out to me, I will put it in there. And also my direct cell phone line. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared.
We'll see if these graphs finally processed. Yeah, this is what I was showing you, is that I went back too far, and you can see listings that were there, but no sales, because I don't have any sales data. So these graphs don't look very good because there's no data coming into the graphs themselves. So you got to be able to be a little bit careful in making sure that you get the quantity of data that matches the time period that you're trying to analyze, or your graphs are going to look a little strange when when they come in. So yeah, this kind of looks funny just because of the way that the lack of data on the front end. So all righty, well, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.